All right, folks, here we are, chapters 5 through 9. All right, so the first half of the book, hopefully you read it and you're caught up. If not, you still have some time. We have the blog up. We didn't have too many questions, and we had Miss Becky came with a question, and I sent some information her way. Hopefully she has that, and if you have any more questions, send it our way, because we're trying to do the best we can to make this practical for what you're doing every day. That's the point, to build a business and take this book and make it work for you. So chapters 1 through 4 were basically how to get some leads, some different strategies, the websites, and hopefully you checked out like Weebly and WordPress and Wix and those kind of websites to kind of find ways to make it a little more personal than the hometown one, which just has your listings. And we talked about landing pages and different ways to capture the leads. So then he kind of takes a different direction, and now that you have leads, what are you going to do with them? How do you interact with them, and how do you talk to them, and how you stay in front of them? So that's what chapters 5 through 8 basically are. So we're going to start here with the email marketing. And email marketing is once you have some leads, you've got some emails, you got some contacts, you need to put them someplace where you're sending them things, and you got to send them things on a regular basis. I use MailChimp, for example, and I send things out every Wednesday. Now, when you send things out, it can be once a week, twice a week, once a month. Well, once a month might not be enough, but at least frequently enough that you're reminding them, this is what I do for a living, here I am, I'm doing real estate. But it doesn't have to be real estate related stuff. Like when I do my Wednesday ones, it's about business and staying positive and how to, keep yourself uplifted and various things. I don't really do much real estate, to be frank. But I'm getting in front of them every week, and I'm sending them various things, and some people unsubscribe, and some people do subscribe, so I keep a pretty healthy list. And I know Hometown has the follow-up boss, and I'm sure it's got the same features, where you can add some things and send some things. Not just, hey, here's my new listing every week, because people get tired of that. Stuff that helps them. Maybe the farmer's market's coming up here soon. Maybe there's something going on in the near future. Maybe there's a grand opening of something, and you're just trying to help them out and give them information. That's kind of what the email marketing is for, giving them stuff that they can't just see on your usual website. All right, so email marketing, that's a good way to stay in front of your audience. And then he goes into different things like Twitter, Instagram, and some guest blogging. With Twitter, he uses Twitter, and actually this is pretty similar to the way I use Twitter. I really I post some stuff like the houses and things, but really I follow other people of consequence. I try to follow people that I'm going to get articles from and information from. It's a little bit tougher in our industry really to do a lot of tweet advertising, and I'm sure if you have a way of doing it, please share with us or let us know, or I'll come buy you lunch when you talk about how you use Twitter, because really I just follow people, and I follow people and they give me good articles and good information. Sometimes I reshare it, and sometimes I interact with people that have posted things on Twitter, but not too much. So if you're doing good with Twitter, best luck for you. That's great. Instagram, I do a ton of Instagram stuff, and I do a lot of videos on Instagram, and I do a lot of advertising through Instagram. And you're doing a lot of picture-based things. A lot of millennials and younger groups use these. And if you do, you can do paid advertisements, because now it's owned by Facebook, and you can do house advertisements, your videos on there, you can do pictures on there, and that's a great way to stay in front of your audience. And it's one of those sites that not a lot of people will say no if you friend them. There's a lot of people that will just friend you as long as they've seen you a few times and they know your name. So it's a great way to get a big client base that way too, and keep sending them stuff that doesn't always, again, have to be real estate related. I just sent an Instagram post. The kids and I went to the aquarium this weekend, and I got a lot of likes and stuff like that. The kids are cute. I'm not, so they give me a lot of good shares and stuff like that too. And then he talks a little bit about guest blogging. And if I got the guest blogging thing right, sometimes what he does is he'll write a blog and have somebody else post it on their forum. So that way he's getting like notoriety. He'll have people see him out there, and it won't necessarily be his blog, and it's not necessarily his people, but he gets to reach out to a lot of other people. There's a small group now, like the Tom Ferry and Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss, that little group of people. They seem to be sharing and do a lot of stuff within each other too. Like you'll be on each other's shows. They'll do guest blogs for each other. They'll do guest videos for each other and that kind of stuff. And it's really helped that small group like build up much faster. They don't all have the same client base, but it seems like they get their face out there way more if they're borrowing other people's lists and groups of people. So that's good. And you can even use the guest blogging with like other industries too, like local farms if they do blogging, or local businesses, or a title company or lender or whatnot. You can share each other's blogs and do that information as well. It's a good way to get your list even bigger. He talks a little bit about podcasts, and podcasts are a little more upfront fees. Like if you're going to do it, don't do it halfway. Like have a nice setup with a microphone. If you want to do it as video style, you can do it video style. But make sure you have a setup where people can see you and hear you, and it's clear. And there's a way to create a list of your various podcasts. Again, you can have guests on, and it's similar to the guest blogging where people are on there with you, and you can share information and have a dialogue back and forth. And the podcast is really to stay in front of your audience and personalize yourself once again. That you're not just a real estate agent that sits behind a desk and puts up for sale signs everywhere. That you're a human being and you do things with family and friends and local community and stuff too. So you can podcast. That's another good way. Just like he said, don't half-ass it. Do it right and make sure you got everything down. And if you don't know how, reach out. There's got to be somebody in the technology industry that can help you set that thing up. And then of course he talks about webinars. And he says webinars are a good way to get certain information out to people. You can do like little classes. You don't have to bring in a bunch of people. I do once in a while a lunch and learn, where we do the beer and learns for first time buyers. And you can do those kind of webinars and record them. And you can use them as, if you remember the chapters before us, you can use it as magnet bait. You can say, hey, click here to get the webinar about how to buy a first time home, and they can click and you can get their emails a little bit more. But he talks about it in these chapters really as staying in front of the client base you've already established and staying in front of the people you have their emails and you have their phone numbers and so forth. So webinars are a good way to keep up and keep going. He used the term growth hack a little bit too. He said growth hack is very similar to our guest blogging, where you're using somebody else's base kind of to grow your numbers and stuff a little bit. And he talked about that a little bit in chapter 5 as well. Now to skip through a little bit of chapter 6, he goes through and says you have your lead list, and you have ways of staying in front of them, and you have ways of personalizing yourself, so that way you're always in front. Now he says in chapter 6 you need some kind of system. So once you have a system, to keep following up with them. Don't just let a lead be a lead and let it die and never hear from them ever again. Or don't just rely on them liking your Instagram posts either. Have a system where like every couple of months, every couple of weeks, you just reach out to them and do like a little, hey, how are you doing? Or share an article with a certain group of people, but make sure there's some kind of automatic notification. And if you're one of the people that's just getting started, you're like, I only have like 5 or 6 people. You got to think bigger than that. You got to think that someday I'm going to have 300, 500, 1,000 people on this list. So start big and think big. Don't just make an Excel file and just kind of check in every day with the 10 leads you have. That's going to work for now, but it's not going to work big time. So have some kind of CRM. I know Hometown has one. I use Top Producer. I know agents use all kinds of different ones to every few months keep in front of the people that you have signed up and have given you their information. The other thing he says, once leads start coming in, respond fast. Respond right away or don't respond at all. And he's got a chart in those chapters to say for every 6 minutes you're less likely to get that phone answered. So once you hit that lead, his goal is to be sure they're still on the website looking for information when he calls them. So that way the people are like, holy cow, I was just on the website. And either they're really impressed or really freaked out, one of the two. But if they're really freaked out, there's definitely ways to say, hey, this is just, we're a technology-based company, we're cutting edge or whatever cliches you want to use. But to show them that you're not stalking them, that you're just on the ball and you're very responsive and this is how you run the business. So he talks about do fast or don't. And then make sure you have a script. And that's a big one, and that's one I have learned the hard way. Don't just call people and wing it. At first when I started in the business, that's definitely the way I did it. Like, I'll just call and something will come to me. Doesn't work that way. Have some kind of script. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. And memorize it. Just memorize 1 at first, and maybe 2 or maybe 3, but 1 at first. And be sure you have it down pat that when something happens, you sound natural. Sound like you're talking to a friend, not just, hey, my name's Billy, you're on the website, and I really would like to help you out. Because, that's not going to do you any good. They're going to know you're a salesman, they're going to know you're not a personable person, and they're going to end the conversation and find a way to say no to you. You're going to want to have a way to memorize a script so that way it's natural when you're talking like friends, and have a few key points and ask a few key questions as you go through. And he's got a lot of that in that chapter. Make sure you go through and read it and write some of your favorite things down. But just start with 1. Start with 1. And I have 1 or 2 that I've memorized by now that I usually go through. And they don't always end up the way they start, but at least they start in a certain place, and I usually get the same information from people every time I chat with them. So be sure you have a script. 7. He talks about how important old leads are, just as important as new leads. So if somebody got a hold of you last January, and then maybe they're just taking their time, maybe some things happened, maybe they got sick, don't give up on the old leads. Keep following up with them, and that comes back to our CRM. Make sure you have like every 3 months, every 2 months, whatever your setting is going to be, and just check in with them and just be friendly. Don't say, hey, you ready to buy something yet? How about now? Are you ready now? Now. How about now? You ready now? Don't do something like that, because they're going to just start hanging up on you. They're going to know your phone number and they're going to stop it. And I would say even mix it up a little bit, like a phone call one time, maybe a text message video another time, maybe send them a little letter, maybe do something different. I know Tom Ferry talks about the Zestimate. So what you do is you find the person's address, you get a Zestimate, and a Zestimate is going to be wrong because Zestimate and Zillow is always wrong. And send them a Zestimate with a little letter saying, hey, you know what, we know your house isn't really worth $250,000. Let's sit down and chat about what your value really is, and if you can do any projects around your house to help yourself out. And you can do that with the old leads who are maybe just kind of waiting, or they're seeing the market, or they're kind of waiting. Things like that, where you're being persistent, that you're always checking with them, you're always being friendly. Those things will help you get those old leads maybe regenerate, or maybe they're ready now. So don't give up on them. He always says, keep it simple. He's got an email template that he has in the book, too, where it's just something like, hey, I'm just checking in today to let you know if I can help you out with something. And I can't tell you the number of times it worked for me today, actually. It's just literally an old lead, somebody that bought a house a few years ago, and I just said, hey, I'm just checking in. I just want to know if you need any help around the house. And they got me an email. They said, you know what? We've been actually trying to do a few things around the house. Do you know a good handyman? Yes, I do. Here we go. So things like that actually work. Just keep it simple. You don't need an entire paragraph. Just a, hey, I'm just making sure everything's going all right, and if you need any help, let me know. And he also says sometimes just pick up the phone. I know we talked about the text messages. We talked about sending them something, mailing them things. Sometimes just pick up the phone and just see how they're doing. Don't pick up the phone and just say, hey, ready to sell your house yet? The house values in your area are getting really high. I just want to see if you're ready to sell. But don't do that. You know, maybe even jump on like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever and just see how things are going on in their life. If they maybe posted some pictures recently of themselves on vacation, and just give them a call and say, hey, I saw you were in Aruba. My family has been thinking about doing it. Like, where did you guys stay? How much was it? And just do little things like that where you're genuinely caring about what's happening in their lives, but also kind of checking in with them. And you'd be surprised the number of times people were like, hey, you know what? I've been thinking about calling you. It's just I got behind on work. Things were happening, but I thought I have my niece is looking to buy a house, or this is happening, or I just had a question about refinancing. The number of times that happens just by picking up the phone or sending an email or a quick message, and it works. But you have to be organized, and you got to be able to follow up with the old leads and the new leads. And then he said there's 3 categories of ways to follow up with people and stay in front of people. One is the educational route, which is kind of like what we're talking about with the webinars, giving them something of meaning, which every agent can do that unless you have like some crazy secret sauce or something you're going on. But educational, try to keep that kind of limited because that doesn't separate you from anybody else. A lot of people can throw the educational stuff out there for people. But things do happen in the market. Things do change. Values change. Loans change. So there is good information. I'm not saying it's bad. That is a more common way of doing it. There's reason to entertain. If you're going to entertain people, like I said, my kids' pictures at the aquarium. That's a good way of like saying what's going on in the world. We were out doing this. We were over at Spider Hall Farms this weekend. We were out doing this. Hey, you should come check out Sweet Sue's. You should do this. That is to entertain people and let them know what's going on in their community. That's another great way of staying in front of them, letting them know that you're a human being, that you're out doing things, and you're supporting the local community. That's a great way of staying in front too. And then lastly is conversational. And in all of his YouTube videos, and if you follow him on anything else, he does talk about conversational. And what he always says is you shouldn't have anything controversial, which sounds like common sense, but in this day of age with all our political back and forth and all of our, we have a lot of things going on with like guns and things like that. It's very, very easy to get swept up into those kinds of conversations. And as he says, it's like professional suicide, because you're pissing off half the group of people that may be interested in working with you. And you've spent all this time doing all these things that kind of keep them involved in your life and showing them how you care, and then you just piss them off by saying, hey, we should do this or that with our politics. So unless you're absolutely sure you only want to work with one group of political people or certain people, I would not do that. Be very, very, very careful with your conversations. Be sure they're upbeat, that they're pleasant, that kind of thing. It sounds a little cheesy, but it's true. And if you're a negative person, maybe this really isn't the industry for you anyway. You got to be very positive, got to be upbeat. So these kinds of conversations and things that it would be great to interact with people, but make sure it's lighthearted stuff. Like, is anybody going to farmer's market on Friday? Stuff like that is really good and interact with people. Not, is anybody going to the farmer's market on Friday and bringing their gun? That might not be quite as helpful as a conversation piece. So, another way of staying in front of the old leads, new leads. Last chapter, know your lead. And he's got a few stalking techniques that he uses. And he actually uses his own name, Chris Smith, to do this because his name is very, very common. One of the tricks that he does, and this works quite a bit, is to take their email address, throw it in Facebook, and look them up. And then you have a little bit of information about them. Now, don't go through and say, hey, I saw a picture of your kids and wife. You guys seem like you're having fun if you've never met that person before. But if they've done things like they posted a blog or they've posted a tweet or they've done something like that, and you say, I've been following your Twitter, and it looks like you're saying this and you're talking about that. That is some really cool stuff. That is a great aspect when you do call them, especially cold leads, to let them know that you care and that you're involved and you know who they are. And he calls that a personal script. But be careful you don't become stalkerish, as he talks about in the chapter. Don't stalk them, just be pleasant with them. So if you're not finding anything good, go with your other script. But if you're finding a few things, make blogs and public information, personalize that script a little bit and kind of let them know that you're following them a little bit and you kind of like some of the things they're saying or are interesting or you want to know more about, that kind of stuff. And then he starts getting into more specific conversations, and he says you need to take control of the conversation. I haven't necessarily done this specific technique, but I've done things similar. So what he talks about is once he makes that call, he says, I see you've been looking at houses in the Owings area. Grab a pencil. I'm going to give you like 4 or 5 other houses that are similar in that area. So he tries to get them to interact right away and show some interest. And he says that if they don't, or if they're like not interested, then he knows his level of commitment to the conversation. We definitely do something similar, especially with like renters that aren't sure if they want to use an agent. We have the, hey, this is the value we bring to you, and that landlords or sellers are the ones paying commissions. And we definitely have a this is our value pitch that I usually do when I talk to people that helps them see the value in what we do. To overuse the word value. But I definitely have some similar techniques for that. So, and then he's got the ARP, acknowledge, repeat, and pivot. So he acknowledges when they say something like a no, or he asks them a series of questions, and he's got questions that he always wants answered as he has that conversation, as he calls people. And I definitely do the same thing. There's certain things that I would like to know about them. Certain other answers pop up, so you have to kind of be open-minded, you got to be flexible. But you have certain questions you ask, and you acknowledge them, and then you repeat them. And then once you repeat some of them, you have that pivot of, these are the ways that we can help you, or here's the things we can bring value to. And I usually do these, especially in my seller meetings with people. I definitely have a list of questions, and I definitely repeat the answers, and I definitely do the pivoting to make sure that my seller presentation is exactly what they just said, or at least makes them feel like that's exactly what they just said. So why would I talk about things that don't interest them, that they don't care about? Like if they didn't talk about listing videos, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because that's not something they talked about. They talked about open houses, so that's something I talk about instead. So not just like over the phone conversations, this ARP works, but in every conversation, face-to-face conversations, this works. Ask them a series of questions, repeat what they have to say, show them that you cared about what they just said and that you're responding, you're taking notes, you're writing things down, and then pivot. Here's the things you just said. Here's where I can provide you the value, and this is why you should hire me, or this is why we'd be great working together. All right, so first few chapters, gaining leads, bringing people in, using websites, landing pages, and then this one is like once you have these leads and you have these people in front of you, old leads, new leads, how to stay in front of them, how to work with them, things to say to them so that way they trust you more. And so far this has been a really practical set of chapters right here. So if you skip the first one, if you already have websites and landing pages, this is a great way, some techniques to keep those people involved in interacting with you. So we had 5 through 8, which means 9 through 12 is next Monday, about the same time. And please, if you see this stuff on the blog, if you have questions, comments, techniques, things you want to share, please do. This is supposed to be kind of interactive. We've been trying to do the best we can to help you grow your business with some of these techniques to the book.